At GSB, there's this running joke that you can only choose 2 out of 3, sleep, social, and academics. I think I kind of deprioritize my sleep.
Pengpeng Wang helps lead one of the most powerful founder communities in the world. 2,500 plus founders, 500 plus mentors, built on a zero equity, helps first model at StartX. But her journey didn't start there. She once had a perfectly mapped 10-year plan, a leadership track at Pfizer in China, clear milestones, steady progress, until she realized something was missing. Today, she works at the center of Stanford's startup ecosystem, where lonely founders find co-founders, where 6-person neighborhood groups replace isolation with trust, and where bold leaps are taken with just 30% certainty. From lab to market breakthroughs to late-night founder therapy sessions, her work answers one question: what if the real startup advantage isn't capital but community?
I was still young and I wanted to make impact. I want to work at a faster pace. Maybe I should just go where the cutting edge of health and the digital health and innovation happens. And there's nowhere better than the Silicon Valley.
So she did something radical. She reset everything.
My career was kind of very carefully planned. But one thing after Stanford that changed my perspective, don't feel like you need to be 80% or 100% sure before you make your move. 30% or 50% sure, and then just try.
Today, she leads community and campus programs at StartX, the Stanford affiliated accelerator that has backed over 1,000 companies worth over $120 billion combined.
What's the catch? It seems like you don't take equity, like you give out a lot of free stuff. There must be a catch. The only thing we ask is you give back to other people. You pay it forward.
Do you think that helping others actually gave you competitive advantages?
Please subscribe and turn on notification so you never miss the next one.
Pengpeng, really great to chat with you.
Yeah, good to see you here. Very happy to have you in our community. You've been an amazing community member, and I already see you connect with so many founders. So yeah, happy to also help here.
I realize we always talk about StartX every time we meet. I'm very curious about your early days, the life you had before StartX. I heard that you had worked a long time in China, had a very awesome career over there, but then you decided to reset your career and come to Stanford and to become a student again.
Yeah.
Tell us why you made that choice.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my previous life feels like quite some time ago. I was in healthcare before Stanford. I was born, grew up in China, came to the US for undergrad. And after graduation, I went back, worked in healthcare consulting and also pharmaceutical company. I worked at Pfizer and worked for its corporate innovation team, where it's a very non-traditional role where I actually interacted with a lot of startups, VCs, accelerators to find opportunities, the next innovation opportunities for Pfizer. And yeah, I was truly inspired and excited about a lot of digital health companies, for example, how those companies can help patients better monitor their health, and that could, in the long run, increase the adherence for those patients. And then I thought, okay, if I'm this excited about early stage ecosystem, instead of working at a big company, maybe I was still young and I wanted to make impact. I want to work at a faster pace. And I was like, okay, maybe I should just go where the cutting edge of health and the digital health and innovation happens. And there's nowhere better than the Silicon Valley. That's how I decided to come back to the US and apply for business school at Stanford.
When was that? Yeah.
I went to GSB in 2021, and I went to this program called MSX program at Stanford GSB. It's a one-year program for mid-career professionals. that I usually call it a program for people with 1/3 life crisis. We're not quite half life crisis yet. Usually it's people with at least 8 years of work experience. But on average, I think we had 13 years of work experience. So and some people have graduate school experience. So on average, it's people like, in their mid 30s to early 40s. So yeah,
that sounds a fantastic program, MSX program.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's actually a very interesting topic. I think a lot of our audiences, they already work in companies. A lot of them want to have a career change. Some want to become startup founder. Some want to come to Stanford.
Yeah.
And from your experiences, what would be the options for people to, if they decided to also come back to campus and learn, what would be the options people have?
Actually, there are really a lot of options depending on your interest, your experience, and like your goal of going back to school. If you have very particular areas of interest, for example, like digital health or health informatics, there's program for that. If you just want a broader network, more just around business or startup, I think GSB, the business school, is a no-brainer. And within GSB, there's different programs. There's your typical 2-year program, MBA program. You have MSX program, which is 1 year. You have a summer program for experienced executive. You also have short-term programs. And one thing that's really interesting is this program called DCI, Distinguished Career Individuals at Stanford. These are targeted at people in their like really late career, maybe 50s, 60s, even 70s. At that time, they still want to go back to school and explore what's next for them after they retire from their career or they exit their companies. And yeah, it's so like even at different life stage, you still have different choices.
So MSX is an awesome program for you, and so this program come to the Stanford and come back to the US. And you did a very unusual path as a usual MSX or MBA student. I heard you took a class from 7 schools in Stanford?
6 out of 7.
6 out of 7. Wow.
The exception is the law school. I tried to take one, but I decided to drop it after.
What motivated you to take so many classes in different schools?
Yeah, I think part of the reason why I chose Stanford is its ecosystem and the diversity of its network. And for my program, there's only 1 year, so I wanted to take as much as take full advantage of that 1 year by actually connecting with people from different backgrounds, different schools. So I actively took classes in different schools, especially like out of my own comfort zone. For example, in the computer science department, I took classes in a sustainability school or education school, which were completely different from what I used to. But I also took a lot of classes from the medical school, which is very related to my background. I think that experience really opened my horizon and also helped me connect with people, like made friends with key connectors in different schools. And that turned out to be very, very helpful in my later career.
Wow. So you packed all those classes in 1 year program?
Yes.
Any tips for time management? That sounds like incredible time management skills.
Well, at GSV, there's this running joke that you can only choose 2 out of 3, right? Sleep, social, and academics, right?
So what two did you choose?
Well, I think I kind of deprioritized my sleep. Social, yes, and spend a lot of time, meeting new people and organizing community events at Stanford, and spend a lot of time, just taking classes at different schools. Yeah, but I didn't really care that much about grades. But it's more about like, the experience. Yeah.
I heard that through these activities, you got your first internship at StartX,
Yeah.
which was to analyze 250 healthcare complaints. Tell us more about that project.
Yeah, sure. I learned about StartX very randomly. I think they had a campus demo day. And as a Stanford student, I was debating, should I sleep that day or should I go to this event? I struggled a little bit, and eventually I decided to check out this event instead of sleeping. And I'm very happy about my decision that day. So it was basically, like a day where they invited a lot of StartX founders back to campus and shared their entrepreneurial journeys with us. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And how can I be involved? And turned out they need some volunteers. And I signed up to be a volunteer. And now I work full-time at StartX. And one of the projects they gave me was to analyze their community of healthcare founders. StartX has a very strong healthcare vertical. 20 to 25% of our community companies are in the healthcare space because we had a really strong medical school, we had a really good hospital, so and we actually had a very active community, so that attracted many companies. And one thing I realized was, number one, I think how diverse that community was. It's not just biotech company, it's medical device, it's digital health, it's healthcare services. So I was amazed by the diversity of founders, which is quite rare because a lot of Silicon Valley accelerators, they focus mostly on enterprise SaaS companies. Healthcare companies are known to be notoriously long in their life cycle, and they have a lot of regulatory barrier. It's just it's a very hard industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I was very surprised to see a community for this vertical, and also there's so many different kinds of digital like healthcare companies, not digital health, but also biotech and the medical device, which tend to be a little bit longer.
That's also something that really surprised me when I joined the current cohort of StartX. Usually in the accelerator, you have a lot of SaaS company, application company.
Yeah.
But when I first joined, I was surprised by how many healthcare, robotics, hardware companies StartX has. I wondered, from your perspective, is it related to the fact is Stanford affiliated nonprofit? What is the focus of the StartX when you select?
Yeah, actually, that's
companies?
a good question, and why there's such a diversity of founders in our community. Number one, I think because we are affiliated with Stanford, and again, Stanford has 7 schools, so what we have in our community reflects a lot on what Stanford is doing. So that's why, besides traditional SaaS companies, enterprise SaaS, or consumer tech companies, we also have healthcare. We have a lot of edtech because of the education school. We have a lot of sustainability companies in recent years because of the Door sustainability school. We also have legal tech, hardware because of the engineering school. So I think that's one. Another reason I believe is our nonprofit, and we don't take equity. Because of that, we care less about if this company will make money or profit for us. We care more about if that person is a good founder, if that person could bring new perspectives to the community. So that's why we actually back a lot of companies that usually take longer to commercialize, hardware or healthcare, in less sexy spaces.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think similar to what I feel in the community is it's really long-term driven. It's really believes in the future and dream the like interest, like really passionate about high tech and long-term investment technology spaces.
Right.
I'm actually curious, since you mentioned about StartX diversity is very related to the 7 schools. Do you think your experience taking classes in 6 schools helped you in the processes?
Yeah, of course. Stanford is a very interesting ecosystem in that the entrepreneurial resources are very decentralized. In a lot of other universities, there's probably like this one center for entrepreneurs, or the Office of Technology Licensing is probably like the center of all entrepreneurship activities. But Stanford, in each school, there's usually at least one accelerator. There's multiple classes, and there's a lot of student groups. So like for me, as head of campus and community at StartX, I actually work with like easily 40, 50 different kinds of organizations on campus that are related to entrepreneurship.
So it's a very diverse community.
It's very diverse, very decentralized.
Yeah. So for me, I'm not a Stanford student, but because of StartX, I'm involved in this community. One question I always have is that people would often think about Stanford has generally so many amazing companies. But one thing I'm very surprised is that StartX is the first university affiliated like accelerator, and I heard that over time you really developed these passions of helping Stanford founders to be successful using your own background, both community building and commercialization skills.
Yeah.
And do you recall any particular moment you have this like wake up moment for yourself saying, I want to help other people, especially in the Stanford ecosystem, to become successful?
Yeah. It's hard. There's a lot of self-exploration, self-reflection, because at Stanford, it's pretty easy to be brainwashed that you need to be a startup founder yourself. Otherwise, like, why do you come to Stanford, especially from the business school? I think self-awareness is very rare. It's underrated. A lot of times I think people do that for the sake of doing it. And yeah, I think GSB and just my Stanford experience, as well as a lot of my work experience, really helped me figure out who I really am, what are my core strengths, what are my core, I guess, motivations in life. And it's not like a fast decision. I actually had to try different things before I made that decision. But one key, key experience that made me realize that I am passionate about supporting founders was my work with Office of Technology Licensing at Stanford, where they paired me, someone with more commercial background in the healthcare space, with researchers and physicians from Stanford. And my role was to help them evaluate their technology and find potential use cases and find potential business models that could help them commercialize their technology.
Yeah,
and
so that experience was really helpful.
It was very helpful.
A lot of our audiences might not be familiar with the Offices of Science and Technology. Can you describe to our audience about what is this department is doing and why Stanford created this department?
Yeah, sure. So I think that is actually a very important stakeholder in this ecosystem. As we all know, Stanford has amazing scientists doing great research. But what sets Stanford apart is how you can actually commercialize all these technology and put them, move them from the lab to the market and actually benefit the society. And this Office of Technology Licensing actually plays an important role by connecting these connecting these researchers and scientists with industry players who who might either license the technology
Mm-hmm.
or some of these researchers or professors, they just want to start a company using their own technology. So yeah, as an example, with one of the companies that I work with, eventually I did a lot of competitor research, and I found a company that's in the same space, but they really lack a technology. Like this, the technology the researcher is building is very complementary to their product line. So I reached out to them, and we started this conversation, and eventually they decided to license that technology.
Yeah, so it looks like it's an incredible service for startups in the ecosystem to help them to find potential buyer for their
Yes.
licenses. Does all company founded by Stanford alumni they can be benefited for this, or is that what is the requirement for
Well,
being in the program?
your intellectual property needs to be registered under the patent needs to be with Stanford. That's the prerequisite.
So
Yes.
that would mean that you either develop this technology as a faculty or as part of the lab.
Yeah, as part of the lab, you have utilized Stanford facilities to develop your technology.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Stanford has a lot of cool technology.
Yeah.
So it must be very busy when you work over there.
Yeah. Oh, well, and also as a, after your technology is licensed or is commercialized, Stanford would actually take a cut from the revenue.
How much is that?
So 1/3 would go to Stanford, 1/3 would go to your department, and 1/3 would go to the researcher.
That's actually a very generous offer.
I think Stanford is pretty flexible. They can also take like equity, different terms. And it's also a great way to, to support this university to function and to operate. Yeah.
Yeah. How long did you work in that department?
Not very long. I was mostly helping 2 companies commercialize their technologies. Interestingly, after I have helped them think about their strategy, business model, market, and product, and I reached out to StartX because I wanted to apply for StartX on behalf of these 2 companies, and that was when I met our CEO, and then found out that StartX is also looking for someone. So I joined StartX.
It also leads your way to the StartX. And then I want to dive back to your experience of a startup like StartX. How was the first experience of StartX look like? How did you get involved in StartX?
It started with me volunteering at StartX while in school. And I've been just keeping in touch with the organization over the years, even after I graduated. And how I reconnected with StartX was when I worked at Stanford OTL.
Did you send a message saying that you want to work at StartX?
Oh, no, I just reached out and I asked them, hey, I have these 2 potential great companies for StartX community. I want to apply. Can we just chat a little bit? And then I reconnected with the previous CEO, Kyle, and I learned about that StartX was looking for someone who could help build their community. And
you mentioned that you were working in a startup back then.
I was helping 2 companies from Stanford, right?
To apply for StartX.
Yes.
Okay.
While I was at Stanford OTL, right? My role was to support Stanford teams start their company, right? Yeah.
And then you connect with StartX, and then you realize that they actually have an opening. Then you decided to join.
I decided to join because it really it's a very rare opportunity that combines, I guess, 3 of my passions. Number 1 is community building. Number 2 is early stage innovation ecosystem. And number 3 is Stanford. So I just thought it was a perfect mix.
Yeah, that's cool. And I can see it's super happy every day from here. I know your title at StartX is Head of Community and Campus Relations. And tell us more about what is your day-to-day life? What is the job duty of this role?
Yeah, sure. So on the community side, we have 2,500 Stanford affiliate founders in our community over the past 15 years. This is our 15th anniversary, actually. And we also have 500 mentors in the community. So yeah, and that they're very, very diverse across very different different verticals, across different stages. And my role on the community side is to make sure all these founders, they continue to be engaged, they come back, they give back, and they help each other across different verticals, across different different geographies, across different years that they've been with StartX. And on the campus side, as I mentioned, Stanford is a very decentralized ecosystem. So how do you like build relationship with them and collaborate with the school and build that bridge between StartX founders and the school is also something that's very exciting. And beyond that, another role I have is application. So each year we have 3 cohorts. So if for each cohort we probably have 300 companies that apply. So attracting promising founders is also part of my responsibility.
Related to that question, I think a lot of audiences will be very, very interested about that. How they can apply StartX? How they can join this community?
Yeah, there are 2 ways. If you are a Stanford student, alumni, or professor, then you're eligible to apply as either a full-time our full-time founder program or a student program. If you like none of your team members is affiliated with Stanford, you can still apply to our visiting founder program. The requirement is you get at least 3 StartX founders endorse you.
And there's also a lot of opportunities for you to know StartX founders.
Yeah, a lot of our events are exclusive to our community, but there are also a few that are open to the public, what we call Friends of StartX. So yeah, if you want to learn more about the community, feel free to sign up for those events.
I think that StartX is starting from Stanford, but I think it's also incredibly helpful, open to the whole startup ecosystem here.
Yep.
It's not that hard to find 3 friends in StartX community. Yeah.
If you come to our events, it's very easy to do that.
Yeah, join Pengpeng's event. I think you will have a Luma calendar.
Yes.
We can post in below the video.
Yeah.
Also, there's a lot of StartX founders in the Founder Code community as well. So just join more event. You are in the Bay Area, you will find 3 StartX friends and make your way.
Very easy. And also just want to highlight that not all of the founders need to be Stanford affiliated. At least just one co-founder is a Stanford affiliated founder is good enough. Yeah, to apply. Yeah,
that's a great quote. In fact, that related to another question I have. I think a lot of people in our audiences and community, and also generally, they would be looking for co-founders. And if they are looking for a Stanford co-founders, what would be the ways they make friends over Stanford? Sure.
Well, first of all, our community is organizing a few like co-founder matching events. We just did one, I think last month, and we're doing more. Hopefully that will connect you with StartX founders. And there's also a bunch of accelerators or student groups on campus that are doing co-founder matching events. In fact, I believe there is a list of people within Stanford, like they would list out their ideas on the website, and then you can just click on it and to learn more about the idea, the team, and then reach out to them.
Is there any like a web page that has those
I think so.
ideas?
I think so.
Yeah.
I can find it later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be great. We'll also put that below these videos. I think the listeners will get so many pointers to get into the Stanford
Yeah.
ecosystem and StartX. Related to that, actually, one thing that I want to dive more into is about the role of StartX in helping the companies in the cohort, in the ecosystem. Many of our audience might not be familiar with StartX, and many of the friends also had questions like, what's the difference of StartX and like YC? What would be your answers to them?
Yeah, I think two key keywords for StartX. Number one is community. Number two is zero equity taken. So at the very core, we are a community of Stanford, mostly Stanford affiliate founders. And as we all know, like Stanford is probably the top school that produces, you know, a very large number of successful companies. So we are very fortunate to stand on the shoulder of a giant because we basically just screen, every year we screen founders on top of that Stanford, very high quality Stanford founders. So, and if you put that many high quality people together in a room, usually magic happens. Be it fundraising, be it team building, be it recruiting, you know, just the connection of this community is amazing, and people really care about each other. Maybe because they have this common Stanford ties, and maybe because their love for entrepreneurship. It's a very, very close knit community. So that's very different from just being an accelerator. We do have accelerator program too. You're going through, you know, the current cohort, right? But we are more of a lifelong community. So it's not just about this current cohort after you graduate. It's more like it's an induction to this lifelong community. And yeah, and I've seen many communities. I've built many communities. I would say, you know, not all communities are built equal, in that like different communities have different ethos. For us, I think it's very non-transactional. It's also very safe environment. And I would actually, I would say that the key reason behind that is we don't take any equity. It's a nonprofit organization, and it's free. So everyone that's in this community is basically a volunteer. And because of that, I think it creates that culture of not very transactional to each other. People are here for the right reason, and they're just paying it forward. So I think, yeah, those are probably the two differentiations.
Yeah, I can testify on that as a founder in the current cohort. It's a very close lead group, and we even so we have this event every 2 weeks, but full day events of every 2 weeks. But also we keep in touch all the time, make intros with each other. So this is fantastic. One thing I really like the program is also the neighborhood program. I think it's a very interesting. Like I haven't seen this in other accelerator yet. Do you want to share a little bit about what is this neighborhood program? And for me, I'm also very curious. Like what gave you the original idea to build this neighborhood program?
Yeah, definitely. The neighborhood program is a very special design that we have for our founders. We match them with maybe 6 to 8 other peer founders, similar stage, similar industry, and for them to share their challenges, compare notes, and encourage each other, support each other. And we sort of call it like an AA group for founders.
AA group.
A group of founders. That goes back to my point about StartX being a safe space for our founders. We realized that it's actually a very lonely journey to be a founder. And we also have a mentorship program. Even though the mentors are very important, are very helpful. Sometimes they're like quite a few years. There's some gaps between like what's going on right now and what was successful before. So it's also very valuable for founders to learn from each other to get the most updated information. So I think that program, I can give you an example how it supports our founders. One founder in the past was going through some very, very hard issues with her co-founder, and it was her first time, so she wasn't sure if she should break up with her co-founder. So she doesn't really have a lot of other people. She couldn't talk about this with her co-founder, obviously. So she decided to talk about it in the neighborhood. And then she asked people, have you ever broken up with your co-founder? And surprisingly, almost every single one raised their hand. And that gives her tremendous amount of courage to actually pull the trigger and to have the hard conversation with her co-founder, and eventually they broke up. But I think it's something that people don't really talk about. If you go to like a speaker event, right?
Yeah, exactly.
These kind of things don't really get discussed. But it's only with that like small trusted group of founders that you can share like your vulnerabilities. You can get support just by knowing that someone else has gone through the same thing. Obviously, they also give her some, like practical tips. Actually, in fact, one of the people she met in that neighborhood later on became her next co-founder. So I think it's pretty amazing. Like that peer support group, how it helps our founders.
Yeah. You had given them great examples, and a lot of times when we do our startup journey, there's like we need some safe space to talk about the issues we are in, and so because StartX is nonprofit founder first community, you actually get that vibe that people are coming to help you, and it's usually very hard to discuss this question when there's a VC in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Because we don't take equity, we don't have any incentive. In the process, we just really want to support your growth. We're a nonprofit. The mission for us is actually an educational nonprofit to just help founders learn better from each other, from mentors. So yeah, it gives out a very different vibe. I agree with you if your potential investor is in the office, in the audience, right? You might want to be a little bit different from when you're with your friends.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Dynamics are a little bit different.
Dynamics is very different.
I think because the environment is so lulable and helping each other. I know StartX doesn't take any equity. But a lot of founders are starting to give back because they appreciate the community. I think some founders, you might know more. I heard about some companies actually just gave the
shares.
Donate
their shares. We are actually kicking off, our donation efforts. And some founders have already generously given their equity.
That's more like the testimony of how the value they get from this community. Cool. For next part, I want to dive back a little bit about your personal journey about that. I know that you mentioned about you always be very passionate about helping founders and building a community. What is your biggest takeaway through the journey of both working in the technology office licensing and also the StartX? What is your biggest takeaway as a community builder?
I think working at StartX makes me realize how important it is to have a community as a founder. Actually, StartX was started by our founder Cameron, who did a ton of research around what makes startups successful. And one of the key takeaways is you need to have a community that supports you both emotionally and practically. And that's why he started to build this community for founders. So I think we've talked about the emotional part, but also practically, it's good to have someone either share knowledge, but also collectively we could have a lot of bargains, right? We could get perks, we could get resources from corporate partners, and we could also get collective knowledge. For example, if a investor treats a StartX company really bad, and everyone would know about this, and and that creates like a protection for the community.
Connecting what I mentioned earlier, it's basically creating a sense of belonging among the startup founders.
And another takeaway I think is, my vision for our community is it could be a self-sustaining, organic community organized by our founders themselves. So we are a facilitator in that process. For example, a lot of our neighborhoods, a lot of our events were organized by our founders, not necessarily by our staff. We do support them, but we do want this community to be self-organized. So part of my priorities this year is to build different verticals for StartX and the different geography chapters. And each vertical, each geography is led by a StartX founder.
So it will be like globally distributed organization.
Yeah, self-organizing community. It's like an ecosystem where it's everything is self-organized and sustained, rather than it's like all managed and top down by StartX staff.
And so that's actually related to my next question, is that from your personal perspective, what would be the examples of exciting project that you want to do in the next 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years?
This year, as I mentioned, we really want to reactivate our community. We're doing a good job with the current cohorts that go through our program every year. But over the past 15 years, we've got 2,500 founders in the community. How do we keep engaging them, making sure they give back? That's something we need to think about and design programs and structure for them to keep engaging, right? So building vertical, we have AI vertical now. We are also hoping to strengthen our medical vertical, fintech, and energy sustainability verticals. And also geographically, we want to expand beyond the Bay Area to say like New York City, LA, or even Asia, Europe. That's our goal for this year.
And also, as for yourself, what is your life's mission? If you see yourself 10 years from now, what thing you will be doing in 10 years?
Oh, can I add one more to the previous question? Another thing that's on our radar, which is also more long-term, is how do we build our relationship with Stanford and strengthen that ties. So I'm currently in discussion with different schools to formalize our strategic partnerships. Hopefully, we could find a way that we could complement, so we could be a bridge between Stanford student founders and after they graduate, before they, go full-time into this entrepreneurship world, they also need a community to keep supporting them. So we want to be that bridge. And at the same time, we also want to give back to the school by recruiting students, by teaching at Stanford, by mentoring students, by giving giving lectures or being a speaker at Stanford. So I really do see a lot of collaborations between the two organizations and together to build a stronger ecosystem for entrepreneurs.
I think it will be part of the very, very important part of the Stanford startup ecosystem and help all the founders in the systems to basically be their launch pad.
Exactly. A lot of people have, students have a lot of resources at Stanford, but once they graduate, they are no longer
That's
supported.
absolutely true.
Yeah. So where should they go next, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully this would be their lifelong community home. So yeah, that's more long-term plan that we have.
That's cool.
My personal,
Personal
right?
10-year passion, 10-year vision.
Well, I definitely think community building is something that I'm passionate about. Maybe for the rest of my career. This is something that makes me feel very motivated every day, makes me feel very fulfilled. You are also a community builder yourself, it's not always glamorous. There's a lot of, logistics, a lot of, dirty work. But once you know why you're doing it, it makes all these hard work feels makes it feel meaningful, right? So I think I don't know what kind of communities in the future, but in where is the community going, but being a part of that and connecting more people, and together we could do bigger and better things. I think that's my lifelong mission.
Yeah, helping others.
Yes.
And one thing that you mentioned, and also that is resonating to me, is that it's actually incredibly satisfying to helping other people, because the relationship we have is usually very reciprocal. If you're helpful to others, usually everyone treats you very well. By itself, that's already very satisfying.
Yeah, and I see actually the most successful founders in our community are the ones who help others first.
That's actually very interesting. I'm very curious about your thinkings on this as you're building the community. Is that there is a concept of founders, usually people would put in different, some founders are like go-getter, they will take it first. Some founders, they are helping others first. And you mentioned about many of the successful founders you see are basically are very helpful to each other. What is your take on this? Do you think that helping others actually give you competitive advantages?
I do think so. Yeah, and I think that also gives StartX a competitive advantage as a community too. People always ask me, "What's the catch? Seems like you don't take equity. You give out a lot of free stuff. There must be a catch." And we said, actually, the only thing we ask is you give back to other people. You pay it forward. And I think people do follow that. And then collectively, that's how we survived, over the last 15 years. And the same goes to founders too. I think from what I've witnessed, people who first give to other people, eventually they benefit more. So that's definitely something I would encourage a potential founder to do.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your experiences of growing as a community builders, getting to the Stanford startup system, and build a community in the StartX. As we're starting to wrap in these interviews, what would be your advices about people who want to be a community builder or people who are figuring out their career?
Before I came back to school, my career was kind of very carefully planned. I tried to have a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, and I work my way towards that plan. But one thing after Stanford that changed my perspective around life or career career planning is, well, this book called Design Your Life, actually by a Stanford professor. He, in that book, talked about how you actually approach life not as a problem to solve, but as an experience, where you actually get a lot of feedback and the inputs as you go. So don't feel like you need to be 80% or 100% sure before you like make your move. Maybe 30% or 50% sure, and then just try for a little bit. And then once you go there, you will get more input that validate or invalidate your hypothesis. And then you can make your move from there. And after a while, you will look back and see how the dots connected. That's what happened to me after GSB. I went to work for that Office of Technology Licensing. It kind of led me to StartX today. I kind of took just a leap of faith, looking back, I didn't know what I didn't know back then. So
yeah, that sounds like an incredibly useful book. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah.
I'll also put the link below the video so our listeners can also find the book. But what you mentioned is I think so useful for me as well. It's like a lot of times you couldn't solve your life as a problem.
Yes.
You have to leave the space, like explore, and that's how you get a serendipity. If you control everything, you wouldn't get a serendipity.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing your journey. And for our listeners who want to follow up and reach out to you, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, feel free to add me on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah. Cool. And follow StartX and Pengpeng's LinkedIn as well. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
love to chat more in the StartX.
We'll see you at StartX.
Thanks for watching the full interview. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.